This is an engine that truly delivers, justifying its place.
A Kawasaki. Switch to sport mode.
In 1975, a 5'3" Canadian rider changed motorcycle racing forever. The race took place at Pocono Raceway during the AMA's new production class, where street bikes faced each other on a real track. Yvon Duhamel had chosen the street-legal Kawasaki H2, a bike riders feared for its sudden, violent power. He rode this bike to victory and unknowingly ended the two-stroke era. His win turned out to be more than a trophy. It became the last time a two-stroke would win an AMA production race, a signal that four-stroke machines were taking over. How did one fearless racer and a dangerous bike make history that day? Let's find out. It's 1939 in Montreal, and a boy is born who'll grow up to weigh just 125 pounds and stand barely over 5 feet tall. In any other sport, Yvon Duhamel's size would have been a limitation. In motorcycle racing, it became his secret weapon. But Duhamel's story doesn't start with glory. It starts with borrowed gear and grease under his fingernails. At 13, while other kids were playing with toys, Duhamel was building a bicycle repair shop that would fund his first taste of speed.
Myself, I like it because I was doing good. And
by 15, he traded pedals for pistons with a 500cc Triumph T100. At 17, he was racing on ice, sliding sideways at terrifying speeds on frozen tracks where one mistake meant to trip through the boards and into the hospital. In his first dirt track race in Quebec, he came second place with borrowed riding gear. Most riders would celebrate, but Duhamel saw room for improvement. This wasn't just talent, it was obsession wrapped in an unassuming package. At 125 pounds, Duhamel could muscle motorcycles that bigger men couldn't handle. His compact frame meant less wind resistance, better weight distribution, and the ability to throw bikes around like toys. But his real advantage wasn't physical, it was mental. While other riders respected their machine's limits, Duhamel treated limits as suggestions.
I love Kawasaki triples, I love Kawasaki history, and I love Canadian motorcycle history.
While others backed off when bikes got unpredictable, Duhamel leaned in harder. It's what made him a 6-time winner of Canada's White Memorial Trophy, the country's highest motorcycle racing honor. But it's also what nearly killed him on a regular basis. He pushed machines beyond their breaking points because that's where victory lived. He understood something most racers never learn. The fastest way around a racetrack often exists in the space between control and catastrophe. By the late 1960s, Duhamel had proven himself on everything from ice to dirt to road courses. He'd finished second at the prestigious Daytona 200, the closest any Canadian had come to winning America's most important motorcycle race. He'd become the first rider to qualify for Daytona with a lap speed above 150 miles per hour, doing it on a tiny 350cc two-stroke while bigger four-stroke struggled to keep up.
Yvon Duhamel takes the Z1 around the 2-mile oval wide open. Even the mechanic.
The motorcycle world was taking notice. More importantly, manufacturers were taking notice. And Kawasaki, fresh from their aircraft building roots and hungry to prove themselves against Honda's dominance, saw exactly what they needed. A rider who understood that sometimes the only way to win was to risk everything. When Kawasaki signed Duhamel for the 1971 season, they weren't just hiring a rider. They were recruiting a test pilot for a motorcycle that existed at the very edge of controllability. The Kawasaki H2R wasn't designed by engineers who prioritized rider comfort or mechanical reliability. It was built by people who understood that aircraft need to be fast first and safe second. When the Allies banned Japanese aircraft production after World War II, those same engineers didn't lose their appetite for building machines that could kill you if you weren't paying attention. They just started putting wheels on them instead of wings. The H2R was essentially a racing version of the street-legal H2 Mach 4, that legendary widowmaker we explored before. But where the street bike was merely brutal,
really our roots of the business has started from Kawasaki aircraft business. So
the race version was absolutely unhinged. Think of it like this. If the street H2 was a barely tamed wolf, the H2R was a wolf that had been fed nothing but raw meat and amphetamines. At the heart of this mechanical monster sat 748 cubic centimeters of two-stroke fury, 3 cylinders arranged in a line, each one ready to deliver power like a controlled explosion. The engine claimed 100 horsepower at a time when most race bikes struggled to make 80. But raw numbers only tell part of the story. The real terror and magic was in how that power arrived. Two-stroke engines don't deliver power smoothly like four-strokes. They hit like lightning. Below the power band, the H2R was as docile as a Sunday ride. Above it, the bike transformed into something from another dimension. Riders described it as flipping a switch connected to a rocket engine. The front wheel would lift without warning. The handlebars would try to tear themselves from your grip. At high speed, the frame would flex so violently that riders thought the bike was shaking itself apart.
I was very happy and very proud of winning all those races, especially.
Which frequently it was. The chassis was derived from Kawasaki's smaller racers, basically an enlarged version of their 125cc frame. It was like taking a bicycle frame, beefing it up just enough to hold together, then bolting in an engine with twice the power it was designed to handle. The result was a motorcycle that rode like a controlled explosion looking for somewhere to happen. To make matters worse, the H2R was thirsty beyond belief. While other bikes could compete a 200-mile race on a single tank of fuel, the H2R needed pit stops. Lots of them. In the longest races, Kawasaki riders would have to stop twice for fuel while their competitors stopped once, or not at all. Kawasaki's management had a theory. The extra power would be worth the fuel stops. They'd just outrun everyone so badly that the time lost in the pits wouldn't matter. Sometimes they were right. Sometimes the bikes exploded before they could prove the theory.
At Daytona, knocking out 2,631 miles with an average speed of 100.
When everything worked, nothing could touch it. When things went wrong, which was often, the results were spectacular. But Duhamel didn't just ride the H2R, he understood it. He learned to work with its violent personality instead of fighting it. While other riders tried to tame the bike's savage power delivery, Duhamel learned to use it as a weapon. And in 1972, that partnership produced something magical: Kawasaki's domination of American road racing. 1972 was the year Kawasaki went from motorcycle manufacturer to racing legend. It was also the year Yvon Duhamel proved that sometimes the most dangerous bike on the track is exactly what you need to win. The season started with disaster. At the Daytona 200, chains snapped under the H2R's torque, tires shredded from the power. Duhamel, Gary Nixon, and Paul Smart all retired with mechanical failures.
For me, it's incredible that a production bike's already at this level. I mean, I haven't been involved in a lot.
Watching from the sidelines as other manufacturers carved up the most prestigious race in American motorcycle racing. But Kawasaki engineers aren't the type to accept defeat gracefully. By the time the series reached Road Atlanta, the H2R had been developed and improved. Duhamel placed second to a Suzuki, then was awarded the victory when officials discovered illegal cylinder heads on his competitor's bike. It was the first hint of what was coming. At Indianapolis, Duhamel demonstrated the riding style that would make him legendary. After surging into the lead, mechanical problems forced him to pit for adjustments, dropping him to 17th place. Most riders would have settled for a top 10 finish. Duhamel saw an opportunity for a masterclass in racecraft. He carved through the field like a surgeon with a scalpel, passing rider after rider, using the H2R's explosive power to blast past competitors on straightaways, then using his superior bike control to hold position through the corners. By the checkered flag, he'd fought his way to second place, just 32 seconds behind winner Cal Rayborn. But it was at Talladega where Duhamel and the H2R delivered their most dominating performance.
First one they did it, but this bike has been developed on the track. All of the
wide-open Alabama Speedway was perfect for Kawasaki's horsepower advantage. Duhamel didn't just win. He lapped the entire field except for his teammate Gary Nixon, who finished second. It wasn't just victory. It was humiliation for every other manufacturer on the track. The racing press began calling Kawasaki's squad the Green Meanies, a reference to their distinctive lime green paint scheme and their tendency to destroy the competition. It was meant as an insult, but Kawasaki wore it like a badge of honor. The season's most spectacular moment came at the Ontario Motor Speedway season finale. The race was run in two segments with a 45-minute break, featuring an international field that included World Championship superstars Phil Reed, Jarno Saarinen, Renzo Pasolini, Kel Carruthers, and young Kenny Roberts. Duhamel had crashed during qualifying and was forced to start from the last row, 53rd position. When the green flag dropped, he demonstrated exactly why he'd become a legend.
He told me that sometime during the event, his left-hand clip-on handlebar.
First lap, 53rd to 21st, 32 positions gained in a single lap. By lap 16, he charged all the way to the lead, passing world champions and future Hall of Famers like they were standing still. Then, while trying to lap a back marker, he crashed out of the race. Most riders would have called it bad luck and gone home. Duhamel started the second leg from 37th place and began another charge through the field. He'd made it to 12th when injuries from his first crash finally forced him to retire. Even in defeat, Duhamel had delivered a masterclass in racecraft that people still talk about decades later. The The 1972 season established both Duhamel and the H2R as forces of nature, but 1973 would be their masterpiece. 1973 was the year everything came together for Kawasaki. Increased budgets, improved bikes, a team of riders who understood how to extract every ounce of performance from these machines. It was also the year Duhamel proved he was more than just fast, he was smart. The season started with heartbreak at Daytona. Duhamel and teammate Art Bowman had built a commanding lead when they hit spilled gasoline in turn 1. Both bikes went down simultaneously, ending Kawasaki's dreams of finally winning America's most prestigious race. But that disappointment only fueled their determination. The Green Meanies went on a rampage that would redefine American road racing. Nixon won at Loudon. At Laguna Seca, Kawasaki dominated qualifying so completely they filled the first 3 positions in the first heat and took 1st, 2nd, and 5th in the second heat. In the main event, they ran 1, 2, 3, 4 until crashes and mechanical failures shuffled the order. Nixon still won. Nixon won again at Mount Pocono. Duhamel took Charlotte. And at the season finale at Ontario, Duhamel, Nixon, and Bowman swept the podium, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd for Kawasaki. The H2R had won 5 of 9 AMA road races. No other manufacturer came close. But Duhamel's most impressive performance that year came away from AMA competition.
Test, develop a lot of new parts, a lot of new systems on the bike.
The Transatlantic Trophy Match races pitted the best British riders against the top North American road racers in a 6-race series in England. It was motorcycle racing's version of the Ryder Cup, with national pride on the line. Duhamel ended the series as the top individual points leader with 1 victory and 3 podium finishes. He'd beaten the best riders in the world on their home turf, riding a motorcycle that most of them considered barely controllable. It was the peak of both Duhamel's career and the H2R's dominance, but peaks by definition don't last forever, and the 1973 oil crisis was about to change everything. Success in motorcycle racing is often measured in milliseconds and millimeters. The difference between victory and defeat can come down to a single gear ratio, a suspension setting, or a tire compound. But sometimes the difference comes down to economics and politics happening thousands of miles from any racetrack. The 1973 oil crisis didn't just change gas prices, it changed everything about how Americans thought about performance vehicles.
To have such a fantastic team around me, it's priceless. You know, this is my 5th year.
Suddenly, a motorcycle that consumed fuel like a small aircraft wasn't just impractical, it was politically toxic. Kawasaki's racing budget was slashed overnight. The full factory team was cut from 5 permanent riders to just Duhamel and Art Bowman. Support staff was reduced, development stopped. While Kawasaki struggled with reduced resources, their competitors were advancing rapidly. Yamaha introduced the TZ750, a water-cooled 4-cylinder 2-stroke that combined the H2R's power with far better reliability. Where the Kawasaki needed constant maintenance and frequent rebuilds, the Yamaha ran race after race without drama. The writing was on the wall. The H2R's era of dominance was ending. Duhamel could see it coming. At the 1974 Transatlantic Trophy, he was forced to ride substandard equipment because Kawasaki couldn't afford to prepare proper racing machines. He won the first race and set a new lap record at Brands Hatch, proving he still had the speed. But then the piston seizure started.
Department. My job is parts inventory and quality control.
Race after race, Duhamel's bikes failed, not because he was pushing too hard or making mistakes, but because Kawasaki could no longer afford the development and preparation that kept the H2R competitive. After multiple retirements due to mechanical failure, Duhamel did something unprecedented in his career. He gave up. He sat out the final race of the series, unwilling to risk injury on equipment he knew would fail. For a rider who'd built his reputation on never backing down, never giving up, it was a moment of profound disappointment. But Duhamel wasn't finished yet. He still had one more chapter to write, and it would be his most important. In 1975, the AMA made a decision that would change motorcycle racing forever. They introduced production class racing, a support category for motorcycles based on street-legal machines rather than purpose-built race bikes. The established racing community was skeptical. Many top riders were openly disdainful. Production bikes weren't real racing machinery. They were heavy, underpowered, and designed for street use rather than track performance.
Lots to see on the Kawasaki stand, not just the new product, but a lot of exciting carrier.
Duhamel saw an opportunity where others saw compromise. The first production race was held at a support event for the Laguna Seca National. Kawasaki entered Duhamel on a modified version of their Z1 4-stroke. and despite his small stature making it difficult to handle the heavy machine, he muscled it to victory. The next race was at Pocono Raceway. This time, Duhamel made a different choice. Instead of the 4-stroke Z1, he climbed aboard something far more familiar, a 750cc Kawasaki H2 street bike. It wasn't the purpose-built H2R that had dominated earlier in the decade. This was essentially a street bike with racing modifications, safety equipment, suspension tuning, and performance tweaks, but fundamentally the same machine you could buy at a dealership, which made what happened next even more remarkable. When the green flag dropped, Duhamel did what he'd been doing for over a decade.
It's Kawasaki's mission to be a carbon-neutral company.
He disappeared from the field. The explosive power delivery that made the H2 famous on the street translated perfectly to the racetrack. Where other production bikes were heavy and sluggish compared to purpose-built racers, the H2 was still a missile. Duhamel won the race convincingly, proving that in the right hands, street-based machines could deliver spectacular performance. Nobody at the track that day realized they'd witnessed history. That victory at Pocono would be the last time a 2-stroke motorcycle would win a production class race at an AMA road racing event, ever. The production class series would eventually become the AMA Superbike Championship in 1986, one of the most important racing series in American motorsport. But it would be dominated entirely by 4-stroke motorcycles. The era of 2-stroke supremacy was over. Duhamel's victory represented the end of an era that had defined motorcycle racing for more than a decade.
We're investigating hydrogen power. We will still be producing internal combustion engine motorcycles.
It was the final triumph of the philosophy that had created the H2R, pure performance above all else, regardless of the consequences. What made Duhamel's final 2-stroke victory so significant wasn't just the historical context, it was what it represented about the man himself. By 1975, Duhamel was age 35, old by racing standards. He'd been competing professionally for nearly 2 decades, accumulating crashes, injuries, and the kind of wear that comes from a lifetime of living at racing's absolute limit. Lesser riders would have stepped back, taken easier rides, maybe moved into a management role. Duhamel was still riding at 100%, still willing to throw his small frame onto machines that could kill him if he made a mistake. His participation in production racing gave credibility to a new class that many established racers dismissed.
Valves are open longer and for greater duration, so it makes more power.
When a rider of Duhamel's stature and accomplishments took production racing seriously, others had to pay attention. But more than that, his choice to ride the H2 instead of a more conventional machine showed he was still the same racer who'd built his reputation by choosing the most difficult path to victory. The H2 in production trim was still a handful. It still had the explosive power delivery that made it dangerous. It still required the kind of riding skill that separated professionals from amateurs. Most riders would have chosen something safer, more predictable. But Duhamel chose the bike that demanded the most from its rider, because that's where he'd always found his advantage. That victory at Pocono was more than just another win in a long career. It was validation that the philosophy that had created both Duhamel and the H2 still had a place in racing, even as that philosophy was about to disappear forever. After 1975, 2-stroke motorcycles continued to compete in Grand Prix racing for another 3 decades, but in American production racing, they were finished.
Show bikes from my championship winning years brings back so many cool memories.
The combination of environmental concerns, fuel consumption, and the superior reliability of 4-stroke engines had made them obsolete. Duhamel continued racing into the 1980s, gradually reducing his schedule as he helped fund and manage his son's racing careers. His last major victory came at age 53 at the 1992 Daytona 200 support races, where he won 3 classes in a single weekend, proving that skill and determination don't respect age limits. But that victory at Pocono in 1975 remains special. It was the final exclamation point on an era that had redefined what motorcycles could do and what riders could endure. The H2, both in street and racing trim, represented a philosophy that no longer exists in modern motorcycling. Today's bikes are faster, more reliable, and far safer than anything from the 1970s. They're also more sophisticated, with electronic systems that can compensate for rider error and prevent the kind of sudden power delivery that made the H2 both thrilling and dangerous.
Performance, and the new machine takes that to a stunning new level. Refinement.
Modern racing bikes produce 3 times the power of an H2R, but they deliver it through computer-controlled systems that make them more predictable than a 1975 Honda Civic. They're better motorcycles by every objective measure, but they're not as exciting. The H2 era demanded a different kind of rider, someone willing to form a partnership with a machine that had strong opinions about how it should be ridden, someone who understood that the fastest way around a racetrack often exists in the space between control and disaster. Riders like Yvon Duhamel. His final two-stroke victory wasn't just the end of an era for motorcycle technology, it was the end of an era for a certain type of rider, the kind who succeeded not despite their machine's flaws, but because of them. Today, Yvon Duhamel is remembered as one of the greatest motorcycle racers in history. 6-time winner of the White Trophy, AMA Hall of Famer, Canadian Motorsport Hall of Fame inductee, the father of Miguel Duhamel, himself a 5-time Daytona 200 winner. But his most important legacy might be that victory at Pocono in 1975, the race that nobody realized was making history. That win represented the final triumph of a philosophy that had dominated motorcycle racing for more than a decade. The idea that pure performance mattered more than comfort, reliability, or safety. It was the last hurrah for machines like the H2 that demanded everything from their riders and gave everything in return. The H2 that carried him to that historic win still exists. It's been restored and is displayed in museums, a reminder of an era when motorcycles were built for riders who understood that sometimes the only way to go fast is to risk everything. Looking at that bike today, with its simple frame, basic suspension and brutally powerful engine, it's hard to believe it could compete with modern machinery, but in the right hands, at the right moment, it was unbeatable, just like the man who rode it. Yvon Duhamel didn't just win a race at Pocono in 1975, he closed the book on a two-stroke dominance in American production racing forever. Would you have been skilled enough to handle a H2 at racing speeds? More importantly, would you have been brave enough to try? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about the riders and machines that redefine what was possible on two wheels, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell.